Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Psychic Kitchen podcast. Today we have Ashala, um, and you can find us on Spotify and the Facebook group, The Psychic Kitchen. And her website is eyeoftheworld.ca. We're talking about tarot and a lot of other topics. How you doing today, dear?
Very well, thank you. Excited to be joining you, fellas. I don't know much about what you do, but the title is so intriguing, Psychic Kitchen. As soon as I was invited, I was like, oh yeah, sign me up. I'm joining that, whatever that is.
I'm a healer in a lot of different disciplines. I was trained in Mayan shamanism from a teacher, 36,000 year lineage, and
Beautiful.
medium, psychic, exorcist. I do a lot of things. What about you, Jimmy? What do you do? We never introduced ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. I do a little bit. I mainly do sound frequency healing and stuff like that. I used to do a bit of channeling and mediumship and all of that kind of stuff, but not so much anymore. I like to concentrate on the music and the sound. But tell us about yourself, Ashala. What do you do? And
Awesome, thank you. Well, I've been exploring the esoteric arts probably for really long time. I'm aging myself if I say 30 plus years, but anyway, yeah, that long. And, a really interesting journey of exploration. It actually began with divination using dowsing rods and a pendulum back in the 80s, believe it or not. And just exploring different spiritual philosophies and modalities, and then over time developing my intuitive skills, which I believe are latent in all of us. And I started working with the tarot, I guess it was like late 90s. And I started offering professional tarot readings in the early 2000s. And then I really got interested. I'm very academically focused. So I got super interested in the history and the origins of the tarot and other divination systems. So I started to do more and more research about that. And I found, as I became informed about the background of so many of these modalities, that it helped deepen my practice. And it formed a much more, I want to say, respectful, kind of grounded relationship with these tools.
yeah,
And then once I felt like, I was experiencing the benefit of that, I began to share that with others. So I started teaching classes around 2007, and in 2018 and 19, I wrote a double workbook series, volume 1 and 2 of your tarot tools, which is available in ebook format on my website. And now I've been teaching classes, first of all in person and now virtually online for about the last 4 years. And now I'm working on a pre-recorded, I've got a tarot masterclass pre-recorded that's on my website that's free. And then I'm working on a 8-module series of pre-recorded level 1 classes that are going to be available hopefully by midsummer.
yes.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I saw that you had a tarot masterclass thing on your website, and I thought, because I don't know that much about the tarot.
Yeah.
I'm aware of it, and know some of the cards and everything like that. And I think I've got a couple of tarot decks, but I've never really used it properly. But I'm going to take your masterclass thing, just to sort of introduce myself a bit more to it. But sorry, Thomas, you were going to say?
Well, it just came up for my guides. So the origins of tarot, like there's so many different theories on them.
There is.
Like the Jewish mysticism, maybe the Kabbalion. I don't know this. I was wondering what your take is on it.
Yeah, well, I'm a historian, especially into alternative history and cultural anthropology and stuff like that. So I've kind of gone at it. I mean, obviously taking all of those factors into account, the potential Egyptian mystery school origins and the Kabbalistic influences that have come in over the centuries. I also like to just look at it as a phenomena related to culture and, kind of historical development. And So the origins are basically, shrouded in mystery, but we see games of similar nature coming out of China as early as 700 AD kind of thing, and then those games traveling across the Silk Road and coming into Andalusia and northern Africa, influencing the beginning of games like chess and Quattro Regis, I think is called, which is a lot of where the tarot is based on, which is the Four Kings game. And so you have this development of games that get more and more sort of sophisticated or influenced by the cultures that are overlapping. So also you have, Western tradition. I just like to say the tarot is like a catalog of our Western historical background, mythological background, because we have influences from, the Vedic traditions. We have influences of where the Vedic and the Celtic overlap, and the, Tuatha De Danann. So you've got these four suits which correspond to the different modalities of the Hindu tradition, for example, the scepter and the wand and the cup and and then the stone and the cup and the wand of the Celtic tradition. So we're looking at something that is basically a weaving together of a lot of these different backgrounds at a time in Europe when, like the 1300s, basically in sort of like the Renaissance period in northern Italy. And that's where the actual original deck of 78 cards kind of came into being.
I've got that, I think. Hold on. I'll go and get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a out of left field question. So have you ever seen, because I know history, I read a lot of Graham Hancock and stuff of that nature since I've been like 20 and 45. So like 21. Anyways, and there's obviously so much out there that history is not covered. I mean, Atlantis, all kinds of things, except for maybe Plato. But have you ever seen any connections with Thoth and the tarot?
Well, yes. I mean, if we're looking at Thoth and then, like you say, Atlantis and the Egyptian mystery school traditions, they're forming part of that backdrop. Mm-hmm. So they influence the development of European culture, especially in northern Italy. Like there's a whole, Egyptian mystery school tradition that comes out of northern Italy. So you can just imagine that you have these features that are evolving, co-evolving in different locales. And I think that this was just when the tarot was put together as a unique system. It was drawing on, like, for example, that it's 78 degrees of wisdom or initiation. That is it's Kabbalistic, but I feel like it's also ancient Egyptian mystery school practice of these steps or stages of initiation. So I guess what you could say is you're looking at things like the four suits, which relate to the mysticism of Celtic and Hindu, our ancient, basically Western civilization, historical mythology. And then you're looking at the 22 major arcana, which are definitely a Kabbalistic numerological system. But then there's a backdrop of ancient, Thoth and the Egyptian mystery school that's woven into the Kabbalah as well. So this is where it gets very mysterious. But what I like to do is look at, okay, we see this in other places. So people often look at the tarot as just this anomaly, this strange thing that was designed for a specific purpose. And what I see is that it's basically a conglomeration and a weaving together of these different related traditions and mystical esoteric practices, philosophies, and mythological structures. So there's ancient history associated with it. And it's basically, I think it got a bit of a modern in the 13th century upgrade revival of let's make this cool and interesting, and let's make it into a game that we can, that certainly the elite can enjoy playing. And then it started to sort of transform once the printing press came in later on in the 13th century, and these cards were able to be more mass produced. Now you have more of the classes starting to engage with these paper game cards and things like that. And a lot of these people were illiterate. So this visual images that are part of a game, but also have some kind of mystical origin, became really fascinating. And what I have understood about the way these games were played back in the 13 and 1400s is that they were played, it's kind of like modern Dungeons and Dragons, where it was immersive. Like people got into it, right? Like the major arcana trump cards, which are the big archetypal characters like the sun and Fortuna and the devil and the priestess and stuff like that. These were characters that people would actually kind of embody when they were playing the game.
All right. Cool.
So yeah, and I cover most of this in the master class. So, but
one theory I have, sorry, Jimmy. One theory I have, it's I'm getting these questions out of right field for my guys. So I'm just going to throw this in here. One theory I have, I did incarnate as a high priest when Atlantis fell. So anyways, is that when Atlantis fell, they went to all corners of the globe and started giving their technology. So I don't know, Thoth keeps coming up. They keep bringing up Thoth for some reason. I don't know why. With me, I talk to a lot of masters, so I work with a lot of masters, like Surface Bay and other people. But anyways, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. So on another end of this, you have tarot as like a blueprint for the soul. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. And this is something that I feel like we meaning the collective of those of us that are interested in these topics, we can go into this deeper over the upcoming, decades. Yeah. But basically, as I was teaching the major arcana, so I understand that this is 78 degrees of wisdom or initiation, the whole tarot system. It's not just these random cards thrown together. You've got 22 major arcana, they would be the trump cards of the original game, but they're these major archetypal figures from Western historical mythology, basically. And that follows back into the more ancient mystical traditions of the Egyptian mystery schools and so on. So basically you've got those 22 at the beginning of the tarot, then you've got 16 court characters, which are like personality archetypes. Interesting, Myers-Briggs also has 16 personality archetypes, and the court characters of the tarot kind of are loosely relatable to that, as well as to the 12 astrological signs. So there you go. There's 16 characters in the middle, and then you've got your 40 numbered suit cards, the 4 suits, swords, wands, cups, and pentacles, and 10 in each. And there's the Kabbalistic number 10 with numerological significance of 1 to 10. And then you've got your 4 suits, which I mentioned earlier, come from these ancient traditions. So it's a system. It's an intelligent system. And as such, it's something that can really support our development. It's not, it's been used. It was a game originally. Then it was kind of taken, kept alive, by the way, because the church really tried to completely exterminate any traces of the tarot, and the gypsies, which it's associated with, they just kept it alive, and used it, and they incorporated it into their other divination systems and just used it for divination purposes, which was great. You got all these images. It's really great to do scrying with it. However, we know that this whole idea of these 78 stages, and especially the 22 stages of the major arcana, there's something really relatable for the human condition. And so when I was teaching, I would often teach the major arcana would be the major portion of what I'm teaching because they're the big, important cards. And what I noticed was that as I was teaching them, I was kind of like, oh, it's sort of like we go along and it's like going through our childhood step by step. You know, we start off with the Fool, we're just incarnating and we're trusting, we're taking a leap of faith and coming into this physical body. And then we were coming to the Magician and we learn to stand upright and we start to speak by the age of 1. And then the High Priestess, the shroud of polarity and duality comes over us. And we go into that existential crisis of separate self at age 2, between, 1 and 2. And I was like, oh, there's something going on here. And as I kept going through the ages of basically birth to age of majority at 21, recognized cross-culturally in most of Western civilization, it completely mirrors the development of the human through childhood is completely mirrored in the major arcana. So it became my thesis, and I've copyrighted that thesis. It's like, I mean, I don't know. I've looked around. I don't see anyone else that's come to that same conclusion, but it's pretty phenomenal. And I really would like to do some work with someone who has a background in child psychology. I'm very interested in the Rudolf Steiner approach to the development of the soul. So that's sort of related in my thesis around the 22 stages. But
Do you
basically,
feel like it mirrors like the subconscious mind at all?
well, I guess
Kind
you
of
could
weird about
say
ages.
it's the interface, right? It's the interface between the subconscious or the soul self. And they say, Steiner says that the soul self isn't fully incarnated till age 27, all the soul bodies. But there are these specific phases where certain big aspects, like the etheric body, gets incarnated at age 3, I believe, between 3 and 4. Well, there you go, between the Empress and the Emperor. So the feminine internal, we just went from the priestess, the deep internal soul, subconscious, to the feminine internal in the Empress, and then we step into the Emperor, which is starting to come out into the worldly. So the etheric body is integrated by age 4, and that's when we step away from the realm of the mother, because according to Steiner, the etheric body is still connected to our mother until we turn 4. And the tarot mirrors this. So it's quite phenomenal that there's this beautiful marrying of different systems.
It's extremely astute, if I may say so by yourself, and very impressive as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
it's especially nice to be recognized by your peers, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, when I was given when Michelle, who sort of organises me and Thomas, basically, when she said about you coming on, and she sent us the links to how the major arcana mirrors development, etc. And I heard about how that happens. I thought, yeah, that's a wonderful pattern, or a wonderful thing to sort of recognize, because like you say, you've never seen anyone else kind of sort of put those things together. So yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Is this the Italian Renaissance cards that you were talking about being the first one? Is that them, the Visconti tarot?
Yeah. That Visconti is a vestige of one of the oldest decks.
Yeah. A friend of mine sort of brought them to my attention, and she said that I appeared in them, or someone who looked like me appeared in them. So I thought I had to get them.
And have you recognized who that is yet?
Well, the front sort of is kind of a bit like me, although I don't have quite them clothes.
You've got to hook you up.
I went to a fancy dress, I'd probably wear something like that, just for
right.
And then another one is the knight, and I thought, well, I've got to get them if I,
Oh,
and who's
so Knight of Swords, Knight of Swords, interesting. Bringer of truth and knowledge, and sharing opinions, debating.
And check out that hat.
Oh, yeah. It's great, isn't it? Looks like you could just take right off.
Well, just
Have you seen the cards' names change over time? Like the devil, for instance, is more of a Christian concept, but it's obviously goes farther back. So have you seen these names change?
Totally. And that's what's really exciting when you start getting into the history. Like in my volume 1 workbook, I talk about the history, which I've drawn from all kinds of different sources. There's other tarot scholars that have gone deep into the history of the archetypes. So, for example, the devil, we think about, in pagan tradition, like Pan, that the whole idea of like an earth god energy. And consequently, we have the Christian overlay on top of it, which also has some relevance, right? Because we look at the devil representing like extreme association with materialism and the physical realm, and the potential sort of being tempted into over-identifying with that to the exclusion of the higher realms. And then when we get into being sort of locked into the lower realm frequency exclusively, it's not about one is better than the other. It's just that when we get cut off from the whole alignment, and we're just in the lower realm, well, then we know that a lot of trouble can happen. Same as if we're just in the higher realm and we're no longer connected in the lower realm. So, the devil has changed form. There's lots of the characters of the tarot that have changed form. Interestingly, the Fool also originally was kind of like the wanderer, like a bard. There's even some story that the Fool was like a wandering blacksmith, and that the bag that is on over his shoulder was actually his bellows, and he would wander so it's kind of like our ancient Indo-European nomadic ancestry. There's a vestige of that. So it's great. It's amazing. The High Priestess, there's the Eleusinian mystery schools in ancient Greece. So you've got vestiges in those major arcana cards that connect you all the way back. That's why I'm saying it's like a historical catalog.
Something that you said about the pagan just triggered. I saw a talk that a guy called Alan Pittman gave. In your studies and in the years you've been doing tarot, have you come across a figure that goes by the name of the Green Man?
Yeah. Definitely.
Because it just, I don't know why. What have you? Do you have what knowledge do you have of the Green Man and how he sort of appears throughout time and has influenced certain things?
I'm just trying to go back in my own internal catalog. I haven't been asked about the Green Man for a while. I feel like what I can recall is we're getting into Norse tradition as well, pagan Norse, and interestingly, we also have the Hanging Man in the tarot. That's like the hanging from the tree Yggdrasil. So it's that story about Odin receiving the alphabet.
Because he talks about it, the Green Man appearing at certain stages and being represented, say, for example, in the Jack and the Beanstalk story, the giant
and
like that. There are other examples, obviously, but how the Green Man is sort of kind of like the teacher for different ages, and that because of the representation that is that they give. But I was just curious whether I saw a talk that a guy called Alan Pittman, like I said, gave, and I'd never heard of it before, and it fascinated me. I've got to go back and watch it again because it was so much information. It's hard to absorb all of that in one go. But I was just curious whether you'd heard of it. I thought you probably would have, to be honest. But that's cool.
I find it interesting how these characters jump around because even in the Sophia Code, I don't know if you've ever heard of that book.
Yep.
But the female embodiment of the Christ consciousness. I work with the goddess Sophia a lot. But the green man, I believe, is part of the female masters in the Sophia Code, if I remember right. It's been a long time since I've listened to that book.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like part of me wants to go different directions with this. So the archetypes, do they at all, because I know like Rudolf Steiner, Edgar Casey, Jung psychology, the archetypes of Jung, do they fit into this as well?
Yes, very much so. There's so much, anima and animus. There's so much about, resolution of polarity and duality in the masculine and feminine. It's all throughout the tarot. Like, just pick a card. It's almost every single card has the balancing going on. And so, yeah, it's connected to those systems as well. I mean, if you think about, it's not that surprising that all these systems are connected, because they all are partly influenced by each other. And, we have this idea that a lot of these things happened, like that we live in a world where everything was sort of sequestered into these little pockets of exclusion. But we come from, times in our ancient history where it was a global culture. The Atlantean times, that, like you said, they were all over the planet. And even different schools of philosophy, those things traveled, and there you see the same stories, even in Native American traditions and South American, Central American esoteric traditions, you see related mythologies. And
what I do sometimes is I connect. I'm always looking for patterns. So, like whether it's me studying Enochian and all these other, or John Dee, I'm sure you've heard of that kind of stuff. All other I'm looking. Sometimes I'm looking for cross. I'll come across something and I'll be like, oh, that connects to that. That connects to that.
Yeah. And over the years, it's become, I find that just so exciting, because instead of it being like, we start to go, hey, is this all just the same stuff? Like, what's true, and how come these traditions are different? I see it as just being so validating, right? It's like the fact that these things did spread, and they almost took hold differently in different areas with different influences. So there's unique versions of these different philosophies all over the planet, but they're connected. They're connected. And to me, then we can feel safely held in something that is, it has, like ancient origin mythology that it stems from. And then we can feel like we're part of something important.
So with the tarot, because I'm getting messages here. So one thing I've noticed is in the spiritual community, because I've been in it a long time, there's a bit of a rise of masculine now. And Jimmy saw me years ago on Facebook when I was crazy making fun of twin flames. I was like the first like straight male to like come out bombastically. And people were like, what is this guy? Anyways, so I'm doing energy work and everything on people, like thousands of people watching. So anyways, the point is, I feel like in the spiritual community, there's a big split between the masculine and the feminine. What I've always felt, I don't mean a split like literally, but it kind of feels like competition sometimes. But what I feel like needs to happen, and this may be seen in the tarot as well, is that there is an integration that needs to happen within the human channeling, within the human collective of the masculine and the feminine.
Yes.
But does the tarot also show that?
It does. That's a great point. And, it's interesting. I just have to weigh in quickly on what you said, because I find it really fascinating that in a way, there's certain parts of the mystical esoteric tradition that are, basically predominantly women. like so many psychics and so many people that go to psychics and readers and all of that, you know, sort of like the divine feminine oracle. But then you look at the educators, like the ones that do the historical research and the academic focus and like, you know, the mystery school studies, almost all men. So I feel like I'm a bit of a unique hybrid where, you know, I've been in the like, yeah, like oracular realm as a woman, and I'm also very academic. And so I think we're going to see more of this. I think we're going to see a lot more where people are, there's men that are phenomenal oracles and are really tapping into their feminine and feeling very grounded. And it's almost like, you know, working with, there's a lot of men that are leaders in working with trauma healing, for example, right now, and working with, because I feel like a lot of these disciplines are starting to cross over where we do spiritual healing, but then it segues into psychological healing. So it's exciting. I think we're going to see a great wave of integration with individuals, where the women are going to start, you know, getting more involved in the academic research from that holistic, intuitive perspective place, not just thoughts and ideas and like, let me tell you, I know what's what. It's sort of like, hey, I feel like this is connected to that, and it feels like it's important right now or something, right? So, yeah, bravo. Bring on more of that integration. I think we're really, really ready for that. And with regards to the tarot, like I said before, I mean, I'm just trying to look for some cards. I'll just pull out of what I've got here, where we see a lot of black and white. So this card, the death card, for example, people get concerned about it. It's like,
no, that's my favorite card. That and the Tower. Those are my two favorite cards.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's you could say in a way it's like the recycling of energy, and it's a beautiful card. I call the Death Reaper there, I call him the Happy Gardener, because he's literally like doing the recycling of souls and working on keeping everything, the ecosystem of spirit healthy. So I'm looking here to see if I can see something like the High Priestess, for example, which is about duality, or the Emperor, like the major arcana cards. Just give me a moment. I'll find a couple of them. And we see it, like I said, we see it in almost every card if you know where to look for it. Yeah, so like, for example, here's the Empress, and she looks so much like regal, divine feminine. She's about fecundity and abundance and the richness of the material realm, our, you know, planetary environment and nature and so on. But she's also got this, you know, she's got this stellar crown on. So she's got the necklace of the 9 planets around her neck, and she's got the stellar crown of the 12 signs of the zodiac on her crown, and then she's holding a scepter in her right hand, which is her, you know, authority, her agency, with her intelligence and the integration of all her earth medicine. So it's not just feminine. She's not just feminine. She's feminine with masculine. And then I'm going to look for the Emperor, which is her counterpart. She's number 3 and he's number 4. And he has also, you know, he's got all these very masculine symbols. There he is, all the very masculine symbols, you know, Aries, the ram's heads, and yeah, what are the other symbols of the masculine here? Well, you just see he's on this 4 square, his number 4 on the 4 square solid throne of materialization, and he represents authority and power. However, you see that little trickle of a stream behind his throne? the water bear. And then in his left hand, he's holding the sphere, which represents the goddess. So he's wielding earthly power with his scepter in his right hand, but he's actually, it's all balanced with this energy of the divine feminine that he holds and in a way protects and keeps sovereign.
What is that? In his right hand, that scepter thing. I haven't seen one like that before.
Yeah, it looks like an ankh, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I was going to say it kind of reminds me of a little bit of an ankh, but it's not quite there.
And then if you think about the ankh, even like the ankh has masculine and feminine attributes to it. So you start to go into the symbols, and it just goes deeper and deeper, taking you to the balance of the masculine and the feminine, which feels really important, feels really relevant. So yeah, with the death card, for example, we're looking at a lot of black and white, which is the polarities again. And yet the sun is rising in the distance. So it's suggesting that there's going to be a uniting or an integration of polarity. And same with our high priestess, who's sitting on her throne in between the black and white.
No, what does the J and the B stand for?
Yeah, Boaz and Jachin. So there is some Kabbalistic, that is the gates of the Temple of Jerusalem. So, but it represents basically feminine, masculine passivity and action. So again, the duality sitting at the gate of polarity or duality. Now, this is the interpretation of Pamela Coleman Smith that was commissioned by Rider Waite around the turn of the century, like early 1900s, to do the illustrations based on the esoteric practices. They were both part of the Order of the Golden Dawn, and they were, doing all kinds of research into all these different systems, ancient mystery school traditions and systems. And they were integrating basic imagery of the tarot with Kabbalistic information. So that's why you get those kinds of symbols in this particular deck. And they're related. It relates to the role that the high priestess plays.
So even with the yin and the yang aspects of the Oriental philosophy, you see that in there as well?
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what I was saying about the emperor and the empress, right? It's kind of like, if you look, she's got a little bit of the masculine with that crown and the scepter, and he's got a bit of the feminine with the water behind him and the sphere. So it's you could see it, that's the yin yang, right? And then of course our high priestess, she is almost like sitting between the duality and integrating both aspects of it.
Okay.
Very important for people to understand, because people have these perceptions based upon Christianity, unfortunately. Even though I like Christianity, I like Jesus, but I don't like Christianity.
Me too.
Like good and evil, but it's really like the female and the male, the light and the dark. You can't have one without the other. Especially in the spiritual movement, I'm sure you've heard this before. You've been in it a long time. It's all love and light. And I'm like,
yeah.
I talk to psychics all the time.
Yeah.
It's not all love and light. Because you can't, and not everyone's positive. Especially the way that the people that I've seen lately, and you've probably seen it too, and Jimmy and me have talked about this. He asked me this like a year ago. He's like, or a couple months ago. It's like, do you feel more like a therapist than a psychic lately? And I was like, yeah, I do.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying. And isn't that cool though? Because I was suggesting that for men, especially, I feel like, there's something about integrating that intelligence and that rational kind of problem solving brain into working with trauma and working with therapy, because it's so essential, And I feel like part of why people fracture off either into all, unicorns and rainbows, or they're really into dark stuff, like the dark pagan magic stuff, which is, it gets into, again, it's kind of like the devil. You go so far and then it's about gaining power and advantage. And I always talk about, with the way I work with my practice of divination, it's heart-centered. So it isn't about gaining advantage. It's about gaining self-awareness and learning more about the self, gaining humility, returning to dignity. So it isn't about gaining power over your oppressor or your adversary and like winning at the game. It's about when you're in an integrated, heart-centered, power-neutral frequency, you can meet every challenge of the game from that place. And it's like the true integrated higher road. But it isn't about like, oh, let's not look at the scary stuff. It's about
I do entity removal. I do entity removal. It's a lot of times I'll be working, let's say I'm working with other healers or something, and they'll be stuck at something, and I'm like, oh, let me take a look. But I've always been blessed with that gift where I can see like negative entities. I can get rid of them. A lot of healers and people that do that, they can't see that kind of stuff. It's just, I've seen it since I've been a kid. I've seen angels and other things and ghosts. I see ghosts and stuff all the time. Anyways, but so where was I going with that though? One thing my guides were bringing up, is there any like, I'm not used to asking these questions out of right field. So the Babylonian, is there anything connected with the Babylonian in the tarot?
Yeah, I love that, out of right field. Okay, so the Babylonians, well, we're looking at, ancient Sumer and Mesopotamia, and then we just end up back at Atlantis, from my understanding. The Babylonians, with regard to the tarot, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, like, because I know my theory, I was listening to Billy Person. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, he believes that, and I didn't, when I heard it, at first I rejected it, but I thought about it, really dug into it a little bit, that essentially when Atlantis fell, they just scattered among the earth, and they helped build the pyramid. I believe the pyramids are probably, and I know it's not about tarot, but way older than we, by lush tropical rainforest older, before it was a desert. But what I'm getting at is that these central figures keep popping up in all these different histories, even with the Vedics and stuff, like Graham Hancock talked about coming out of the sea and starting fires on people and making fire and all these things. It's like we're repeating all these things over and over again. It's interesting. I heard Tucker Carlson, of all people, talking about how that they're not talking about this, but he's like, he goes, all these elites know about this stuff, but no one wants to say it. He goes, there's been ancient civilizations that have been extremely advanced, and they're always destroyed by cataclysms. And they could have been as advanced as us, just in a different way. And then all of a sudden, it happens again, and it happens again, and it happens again. And whether that's Atlantis, and what was before that, was it the Sumerians, what was it this, was it this, was it this? Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, why don't we ask, because, I'm interested to see the weave with the Babylonians and, that ancient Mesopotamian culture of basically the Middle East, because it's interesting, I see the Vedic traditions, I see the Celtic and the Norse traditions and the Kabbalah and Egypt. But I haven't really seen evidence of Babylonian, Mesopotamian. Like, that's curious to me. I'm glad you asked that question. So I just shuffled the cards, and I'm going to do a quick little reading on it, see what comes up. So, what do we need to know? Well, the beautiful. It feels like it has to do with origin stories. And now I'm being sort of just taken all over the Middle East, Turkey, Anatolia, like, and then the Babylonian empires and the Mesopotamian. So it feels like it's sort of like epochs and time where this culture was at its height. And curious. So they're saying this sort of started the energy of the wanderers, is what I'm hearing. So if we look at the Fool card in the tarot as being like this, the beginning of a new cycle, I feel like Mesopotamia and the Middle East and Anatolia and Turkey, they, in their kind of height of their civilization, they started basically a movement of nomadic wanderers. And, you know, that could be kind of the story of Enki and Enlil and, you know, the wild man in the forest and the civilized man in the, yeah. So just pulling 3 more cards on it. Yeah, interesting. I'm getting that it's also very much connected with the ancient goddess cultures and the goddess traditions. So that it actually feels a bit more Lemurian than Atlantean.
Okay.
And then they're saying there's some stuff to repair around that. There's our Knight of Swords. We need to do more research in that area. Because there's something that's being sort of, it's off limits and it's locked in, 4 of Cups. So this, looking at Mesopotamia and Babylonia and that culture and their sort of high culture, their golden age, it does feel like it's a little bit counterpoint to the Atlantean traditions. And so it's not showing up in the tarot, which is, to me, very conspicuous.
Well,
Absence, right?
A lot of times they'll speak to us and speak to me or other people in references that we understand. So, like, I have a book over there, The Exorcist Handbook. It's just, I like to read what other people write, even if I don't agree with half of it. But he would literally, or I think it was a female author, but she would go through entire Babylonian texts, and she would find like one piece of information that she could use in like Mesopotamian. She'd read entire books to find like 5 pieces of information that would fit in with what she was doing with exorcist work. I don't know. With me, it's like history is just such a complex thing of looking at things. And there's so much of it that's shrouded and covered up. And it's like Edgar Casey and supposedly I forget the creator of Egypt's name, Hawass or something, but I remember, this is out of right field too, but we're just going there, is that Graham Hancock was approached, Zui Hawass, I believe his name is, I may have that off, and another French historian too, and he wanted them to sign NDAs because he'd go underneath the Sphinx of the Paul. They were doing ground penetrating sonar. And Casey said that the Akashic records would be found and accessible by the collector at some point. But I find it interesting that like he wanted them to sign NDAs. I don't know where I was going with that. I kind of lost my channel there. But they wouldn't do it because they were like, if we're going to do this, we're going to tell everyone we'll be fine. There's no way we're going to walk around them. And then at the Arab Spring happened, and I think they killed that guy that was curating Egypt. But there's all kinds of craziness going on there. But yeah, I just find it in these cultures, I feel like, oh, it's interesting. My God took it. So I feel like a lot of times these blueprints they're saying will start to be found, and then something will stop it from being like shown. Yeah,
and we certainly can see that in the Middle East, can we not? Yeah. But this is interesting. First time I've ever seen and heard that is here now with you all. That the Babylonian and their, we always think of them as being like the Anunnaki and very much kind of originators of the Western civilization model. And I feel like there is that, but I do also feel like they had a much more of a carryover from Lemuria.
Yeah. And there's so much law about Lemuria too.
Yeah.
I know I incarnated there as well. I just don't really remember much of it. But yeah, there's a lot, especially Lemuria, and even ETs working with people, and stuff that are genetically modifying people. That's a whole other topic. But yeah, it's like there's a website, and I'll just say it out loud. I don't know if you come across it, but it's been around since I've been in my 20 years old. It's called sacredtext.com.
No, I haven't.
If you look that up, like just type in sacred text. It's an internet archive of 14,000 books that date back.
Wow.
Some of them could be the 1700s, maybe 18, maybe farther back. I mean, on any topic, it could be like dark magic, it could be the text, it could be. I found a lot of them there, like books of the Christ Child.
Amazing. That is so incredible. It's ironic because I'm looking this week at going through. I have like a pretty extensive library that I've been collecting over the years, but I just, I move around a lot, and I'm just like, oh, there's so much available online now, and I just can't really justify carrying all these hardcover, big, heavy books everywhere with me. So it's sort of like that's the dream, right? Is to have this beautiful online archive and to somehow store it in safe external drives so that no matter what happens, we have access to them. But yeah, like it feels, thank you for that. That's a great piece of information.
I'm sure Michelle can send you a link, but if you just type in sacred text, it'll pop up. It's been around forever. I'm surprised it's still there. But it's origins of shamanism, origins of this, the Tao Te Ching, everything that's in there. The Necronomicon, I mean, everything. It's like I won't even give certain people the thing because I'm like, I know certain people into some really dark magic. And I'm like, dear God, I'm not giving you that because you'll start reading it. I'm not touching that stuff.
Maybe they learned something. Maybe they learned a few things. Let a crack of light in there.
But I mean, everything from the Gospels to even Gnostic texts I never even heard about because I researched all that in my 20s. So, sorry, the phone is ringing. I
know. I just looked. We went past 11:55, and I was like, "Woo, that could be a good stopping point." Now we're exactly on 12 bells here.
I saw something the other day, actually. Can you remember? Speak about the Sphinx and everything, and obviously there's the one in Egypt. But I didn't realize. I mean, I just saw a picture of it, so it may be fake, but apparently there's a pyramid and a Sphinx in the Grand Canyon as well. And you know what you were saying earlier about how the sort of cultural is represented all around the world, and cultures who we're told had no contact with each other have the same symbolism and everything like that. The Mayans and the Mexican and the Egyptians and all of they all have sort of the same figures or the same symbols. Slightly different, but you can tell that they're sort of they're getting the same information, shall we say, or sharing the same information. But I found it interesting that there was a Sphinx in the Grand Canyon. That's not something that is generally known, as far as I'm aware.
I haven't heard of that exactly, but the Americas are just so full, chock-a-block full of extraordinary. Both geologic and archaeological and ancient esoteric phenomena. Like there's so much in the Americas that's been obviously downplayed or given different stories to explain it away, right? So I'm surprised, yeah.
The one that seems to be, I don't know if I can say it, on the lips or popular shall we, in the current sort of people researching the past seems to be Tartaria. I don't know if you've heard of Tartaria, but that was sort of the last maybe 200 years in the technology and all of the buildings and everything like that. I don't know whether I haven't seen anything to do with them with regards to the tarot, whether they did anything with it, whether they had sort of their own thing. But how do you, just wondering, do you see the tarot evolving? Do you see any cards being added or removed? Or do you feel like it needs to be changed or added to or simplified, or, not simplified, but reduced? Or do you think it's been the same throughout sort of history?
That's a really good question. It's like when you add 78 together, you get 15, which is the devil card. But then it reduces to a 6. So that's service and, like service and sharing and sort of reciprocity and all that good stuff. So I'm not sure what I do feel, though, before we look at altering it, adding, subtracting. I feel like it would be really valuable for people to learn more about it. Again, it's if we can just pause and take stock of what is actually there. There's rich information already available as it stands right now. So to me, that would be the first step. That's the thing that I'm most committed to, is to, kind of bring it out of it's relegated to this novelty fortune telling kind of thing, which is, it's just so cool in a way that it continues to gain popularity through all the times that it's been discounted so extremely. It's been, it's been on the chopping block many times throughout history. And so the fact that it just kind of keeps rising and keeps coming back I think is pretty extraordinary in itself. And that there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot to look at it academically, like this work with seeing the 22 major arcana as the development of the human soul through childhood. The beauty of working with that system is that when you work with the tarot and major arcana cards come up in every reading, well, when you are aware of what age and stage of development that particular arcana relates to, it becomes a therapeutic tool. It's like you can actually go back and heal some childhood pieces that were either missing or distorted. I always say to people, look at what major arcana comes up regularly for you, and then look at yourself at the age of that. It's, if it's justice and it's, or the hanging man or whatever, 11 or 12, it's like, what was going on for you then? Because these archetypes are coming back in now to work with you and help you evolve and heal and transform what might not have happened. So, so consciously in your childhood. All of us have huge missing pieces and broken pieces in our childhood. So to me, working with the system that is already there and really going much deeper into it the way I'm proposing is a great starting point before we start altering it too much.
Totally. And I think if anyone was to say alter or add things, I feel like it would be adding, then in some ways, because you've identified the sort of the progression and how each represents the age, then it's almost like, I don't know if you've thought about creating your own tarot or because I know you've written books, obviously, but you would be one of the most qualified people to actually do that, because you've spotted patterns. Do you see what I mean? You can, but I don't know. I'm just.
That's an interesting supposition. I'll have to give that some thought and add it to the massive list of things that I've got on the roster. Yeah, I'm segueing. It's interesting because I kind of went with tarot, like I'm going to get to a point and then I'm going to just sort of set it aside because I have other interests and projects that I want to focus on.
Right.
So yeah, so it's almost, tarot is, I always will love it and always work with it and advocate for continued education and evolution of understanding and understanding with it. And I feel like there's lots of room for other scholars to step in and keep going where I left off. Like I don't want to be the.
Yeah, I know what you mean. What are the other things that you're doing, or the things?
Well, I am very interested in ancestral healing, and I've also developed a system working with our wheel of relations, which connects to the 7 generations past. And people often, acknowledge that 7 generation system as being classically Native American, and it is actually present in a lot of cultures around the world. So it's more of an indigenous phenomena than a Native American phenomena. And so I've developed a system working with our wheel of relatives that go back 7 generations. And there's just so much rich work with ancestral healing at this time. This feels to me like a lot of what people are ready for. And, it's a great compliment. Like I use the tarot in my ancestral healing sessions. So they work well together.
I'll actually use it sometimes when, like, how do I explain it? Well, I had a client, it was entity removal or something of that nature. I don't always have to see what I'm dealing with. I just get rid of it. Anyways, but I put down, which wasn't normal for me. I was like, I need to see what's going to happen when this is over. And so it came. I forget the spread, but I do a 6-card spread. It's from an oracle deck. That's how I learned how to read cards a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's like what you're avoiding, unexpected help, next right action, and the problem in the future. And I was like, oh, I can use that for that. It's interesting. I never thought about that. And it just came in the moment when I was looking at it. But yeah, it's so interchangeable that find it so like enthralling and interesting. It's so interchangeable how these things can go together. Even removing, like when I'm sometimes doing work on people, I have to look at different. I'm trying to think how to explain it on the fly. I sometimes have to remove different energies that are stuck in their fields or certain parts of their bodies. That could be they could be past life. They could be all kinds of things. But yeah, it is very interesting. It's just different ways I'm hearing of doing kind of the same thing.
Different modalities and different focuses. Like the tarot isn't for everyone. Divination and oracular work isn't for everyone. But ancestral work is coming up to be very, very popular. And it feels like it's because we're ready to look at the relevance of the role that our background and our ancestral lineage plays in our current experience. And so it's such a natural next step, I feel like, for our development.
I've kind of just had an idea from what Thomas said and also what you've said, Ashala, because with your work with regards to obviously the major arcana and the stages, obviously each of them are unique in their own right, and they would have, I guess, sort of arguably a frequency that's associated, or maybe multiple frequencies associated with each one, because they are stages, and our frequency sort of can fluctuate. And if someone had a reading, say for example, and got a certain major arcana, then a frequency can be played for them to tap into that major arcana, and bring through the information, almost go into their consciousness, into their subconscious, or deep into their cells, and that would bring forward the information. So could be used like that.
It could be. Sounds like something you might want to do.
Yeah, I kind of just got chills, to be honest. So I'll have to put that on my list.
Right? I love how all us, light workers or energy spirit workers, light and dark workers. I love how we are all calling each other out and saying, hey, why don't you add this to your long list of things? Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I'll have to write that down so I don't forget.
It feels like keys, and Jimmy, it feels like keys, like when I'm seeing his piano keys, like into the subconscious.
So there's so much room, right, for collaboration in these ways. Like, this is what's exciting to me. It's about, how can we each have done our own research and our own like integration and working with the systems that we know. And when we start like sharing and, collaborating and cross-pollinating, it's so exciting to me. Like, I don't want to be an expert in these things, but I have lots to share and lots of great valuable stuff, and I want to see it evolve and flourish in other people's hands, right?
Yeah, totally. We don't want to sort of gatekeep the information like like some do. If someone wants to know how I do my frequencies or what they do or whatever, then I'll gladly tell them so they can do them as well. I'm not going to keep the information to myself.
Yeah.
And that's obviously why you wrote the books, because you wanted to share the information that you got. And so I think that's the way forward, definitely. So, but yeah, cool. Thank you for that, by the way, for that information. That's great.
So if they want to find different information on what you offer, I know it's on your website, but can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so interestingly, I'm literally today going to be shifting the platform where I do my readings from. It's going to be on the Beyond Mystic platform, which I'll be taking my first bookings in early May. So as of today, people can't book readings with me on my website anymore. However, you can go to my website and purchase my ebooks. And please subscribe on the website, because you'll be getting information coming out about upcoming classes. I'll be launching the pre-recorded level 1 series, which is 8 modules, and it's just so much great information. It's really accessible. It's quite affordable, and it's a great resource in terms of, you've got the workbook, you've got these modules. It takes you through this whole practice I call visual divination, and working with first of all, the major arcana and the minor arcana and the numerology. So if you subscribe on the website, you'll get notification as soon as those courses come available, which hopefully will be in the next couple of months. And then any of my other courses and workshops, like ancestral healing workshops and the books associated with that, will also be available there in the near future. And there will be a link to take you over to Beyond Mystic to book a reading with me as well. So,
okay, awesome. Thank you. Any more questions, Thomas?
I'm good, brother. I'm good.
Yeah, it's been super fun, you guys.
Yeah,
it's been great meeting you, and I'd love to come back sometime down the road and talk about the ancestral healing stuff maybe a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Yeah, we're really interested in that. Cool. So yeah, we'll definitely have you back. That's great.
Sweet.
So awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Ashala, again. Thank you, Thomas, brother, as always. And we shall see you, everyone, next week. Au revoir.
Peace.